looking at mental health issues in a structuralist way doesn't mean being simplistic and saying it's all because of society, or it's all because of consumerism, or it's all because of the way of life where we are bombarded with images which we have to conform to, etc., etc. Although there is, of course, plenty of truth in that. But it can also happen that things happen to us in our immediate locale. So that the structure we're talking about could be the family, for example, or it could be a relationship, or it could be you and whoever you might happen to bump into. So it can be, the structure can be as narrow as that. So we can see that someone who has got a lot of mental health difficulties, we can say that this is structural without having to say that it's society's fault. Society and the family aren't really different. The family is our society. It's a small society. And even if there's only two people there, that is a society. It's a society of two. And if one person happens to be aggressive and happens to get off on controlling the other person, which is very, very often the case, then that is an extrinsic source of mental ill health that is structurally based on a simple level as that. And of course, there are cases where we really can't see any externally originated trauma or abuse. And so we can't be too simplistic. It can happen, and it can be seen to happen, that people with a perfectly happy childhood, perfectly okay relationships, can suddenly become very anxious or very depressed or bipolar or something like that. So there is such a thing as intrinsically originated mental health disorders, which of course that does interact with societal structures. But so we're not trying to be oversimplistic with this, but nevertheless it's a way of looking at things that is really, really helpful. So with these qualifications, it is still worth looking at how the wider structure of things, or the wider system of things, affects us so as to make us disposed to mental ill health. And we can generalize the process by which this happens to make it nice and clear. And we can say that the process that happens, the essential process that happens that is not mentally healthy for us, is that we are given an identity. And this is, of course, a curious thing to say, since we don't see the process of being given an identity as being a pathological one. On the contrary, we're on the lookout for an identity. Give me a nice identity, please, because we feel that without an identity, we don't have a leg to stand on. We have to have an identity. So we could say that what the wider society does, as soon as it is able, is to give an identity to a child. And that identity doesn't mean just a name. It means a belief structure, a way of looking at the life, a set of customs, a set of traditions. All of that stuff goes together to create an identity. So once we see that, we can see that the machinery of society, what it's really doing, it's reproducing itself. The culture is not going to magically continue unless it imprints itself vigorously on each successive generation. And then what happens is that each generation becomes a host for this imprint, this culture, this society. And we don't generally look at it like this, but this is, of course, a perfectly valid way of looking at it. We tend to look at it by saying, these are my beliefs, these are my values, and the hell with you if you try and disrespect them because I'm sticking by them. I'm going to walk up and down and I'm going to shout out what my values are because these are my values. I'm going to be aggressive about it. But actually, that identity that we're talking about, which is made up of the values that I'm talking about, isn't mine at all. It is just the identity that has been imprinted on me. And that once an identity has been imprinted on you, the whole business of identifying is that you think you are what you have identified with. It becomes you. You're hosting it. But you're hosting it without knowing that you're hosting it. And so it is you, as far as you're concerned. But really, if we look at it, if we step back a little bit and look at the bigger picture, we can see society, whatever that society or particular way of life or set of beliefs or set of customs might be, wants to, it's like an organism, it wants to perpetuate itself, to reproduce itself. It functions as an organism. And in order to do this, it imprints itself very, very vigorously and thoroughly on each successive generation. And we look at this happening and we think that it's all quite innocuous and we don't see anything sinister there. Babies and small children go in on that side, and out on the other side come out all these generic identities which have been provided by the system, despite the fact that we are more than happy to say that this identity is who I am. So that's the essential process, and the reason that is conducive to mental distress and mental ill health is because violence has been done to us. We've been turned into what we're not. We've been told we are this very narrow little thing, and that's what we are, and we must not be anything else or look anywhere else or be interested in any other ways of being in the world, any wider ways, any less fixed ways, any more fluid ways. We have to stick with the script that we're given. There's no deviating from that script. So we're being very, very limited. There's a big wide field of possibilities there, and we've only got a very, very narrow band, and that's all we can ever have. So we're being, even to say that we're being constricted or restricted doesn't really explain it properly. We've been frozen. It's just like we're stuck in this repeat performance now. I am this, and we keep on reenacting the same ego state, the same conditioned identity over and over again, and fighting change, because from the point of view of the conditioned ego, change is the ultimate enemy. So then we get locked into this conservative or neophobic modality. And so what we're doing in that case is we're resisting life rather than just taking part in it as we would do if we were a bit more free and easy and a bit more trusting and a bit less uptight, a bit less fearful. So then what we're doing is basically, to try and put it in a relatively nice and simple kind of a way, is we're stopping growth. So there is this thing called growth, and growth is the same thing as change. And it's a type of change whereby the range of possibilities that are open to us and how to be in the world or how to relate to the world or see the world or other people grows, it becomes bigger. There's more bits to it. There's more possibilities in it. It expands. Like in the 60s, they started talking about consciousness expansion. This is an expansion. It starts off narrow and it gets wider. We stop identifying with these very narrow ideas that we have about ourselves and realize, I am more than this. Well, I'm more than that. And what's more, that wasn't who I was at all. Even though it might have been necessary for me to get from there to here, and it was kind of like a stepping stone or part, but that isn't who I am. It doesn't need to be endlessly reinforced and celebrated and rammed down everyone else's throats and all that kind of business. Because the great thing is the movement, not any particular point. Whereas the conservative modality is at whatever point we happen to be finding ourselves on, that is it. That is it. All other points are bad. This is good. Keep on celebrating. This is it. This is it. And if you don't agree, you're my enemy. I'm going to fight you over that. What do you mean? My point's no good and your point's better than my point. It is just a point. It's a static imprint. It's a frozen moment. And as such, it's not part of reality, because reality isn't a static, frozen instant. It's not part of life, because life is a movement. It's not part of it's not who we are either, because this static photograph, snapshot of who we say we are, because it's a static snapshot, isn't real. It's an abstraction. And if it isn't real, it can't be who we are. It can't be who I am. We're actually pledging allegiance to an unreality, an abstraction, a convention, a dead thing. So we can pledge our allegiance, undying allegiance to this dead idea, this belief, this imprint. And not only can we do that, we do it. That's what life's all about as far as we're concerned. To find some kind of position to put a flag in it and say, this is me and this is what I'm all about, and etc., etc. So here we have a situation where we've denied reality and we're hitching our allegiance to something which isn't real but is a mind-created fiction, a construct. So if ever there was something which we can see is going to cause mental distress, this has got to be it. It's no good pledging our allegiance to a mental fiction or mental construct, because that isn't even part of life. It's forever alienated from life. It's floating out there in the meme sphere. It's floating out there where this kind of debris circles reality, unchanging debris. It's the debris of our ideas, the debris of abstractions that don't actually exist in reality, but we can think them, and then we can pledge our undying allegiance to them. But we're not going to get anything that is supportive to us out of something that isn't real. I mean, there's no way that an abstraction can be life-giving or sustaining. There's no way that an abstraction can be any fun, have a sense of humor, be kind, be any of those things. As long as our allegiance is to the world of abstractions, which is a world of dead things, then we are like those things. We become humorless, we become serious, we become all about the idea, all about the belief. We have ceased to be human beings, because that's not what human beings are like. That's what mental constructs are like. So when we pledge our allegiance to an idea, we become dead. We become an instrument of that idea. And that idea only has one thing that it does. It gets rid of anything that disagrees with it and tries to convert everyone to its lines. It's kind of like a total fascist tyrant, expansionist. That's what thoughts are. That's what memes are. They're just viruses, dead viruses. Like maybe biological viruses are kind of, maybe they're, as they say, on the edge of the animate and inanimate realms. But when we're talking about mental viruses or thoughts, they're most definitely dead. They're unchanging forever. That's the definition of dead. They show none of the signs of life. They are aggressive, and they do seek to reproduce themselves and fill up the whole of space with themselves. But that's kind of like a compensation for being dead. Okay, so I'm dead. I'm not part of the reality stream, but I can take over. That's what I do. I can make up for that by being super aggressive and not even allowing life. So that really is the basic picture of what beliefs do. They disallow life. And that's also not necessarily talking about beliefs in the term of religious beliefs or philosophical beliefs or political beliefs. The conditioned identity is a belief. It's the core belief. Very, very rigid, very, very strong, very, very intense. So my belief in this identity, as I think I am, is a super belief. How many of us ever are going to seriously question this belief? And so, because it is a belief and because it is an idea, it is life denying. It's denying change. It's the most essential thing we can say about reality is that it is ungrounded change. It's movement. It's not a frozen thing. It's frozen in this one way of looking at things forever. That's called fear. Well, that is the result of fear. It's the denial of the whole, the denial of the infinite complexity of the whole in favor of a simplistic regular pattern, which is not so challenging for us. We just have to learn how to do it and keep on doing it. We just have to learn how to do the thing and then keep on doing the thing and doing the thing. And then if ever we do get disillusioned about what life is all about, we can go and ask someone of us, it's all about doing the thing. And we think, oh yeah, I'd forgotten, it's all about doing the thing. So we keep on doing the thing until we eventually die. And but that isn't life. That's repeating a pattern. That's repeating a thing. It's repeating a sequence over and over again because it's kind of safe. It's not exploratory. It's not going. It doesn't take us anywhere different. But we know how to do it, so we'll keep on doing it. So there's this awful kind of stubbornness. The stubbornness that dead things have. They're stubbornly dead. An abstraction is stubbornly an abstraction. So we can see this whole setup of where we identify with constructs when I have a belief of who I am, and that belief is produced by the thinking mind, which produces all beliefs. No other beliefs around apart from the beliefs that are produced by the thinking mind. That this is fundamentally unhealthy because instead of having a relationship with reality, which cannot be a mind or thought mediated relationship, because thought can only relate to its own categories, which are itself. So thought's always a loop. And if we are to relate to the actual reality itself, this is always a new thing. It can't be encapsulated in a belief, or we can't have a trick of or method of how we go about relating to reality. All methods, all philosophies, all logical things relate us not to life, because life can't be related to logically, but you can be awake and be alert and be alive and be aware and relate to it moment by moment, new moment by moment, but that's okay. Just stay with it and just stay open. And that's the relationship, staying open to newness. But when we do that, okay, we're awake, we're living life, we're part of life, but we've lost the conditioned identity there, because there's no room for the conditioned identity in that. And the conditioned identity isn't very happy about that. And because we are identified with the conditioned identity, we're not very happy about that. So ultimately, our allegiance is to the source of our misery, the source of our pain and obstruction and constriction and restriction. Our allegiance is to our jailer, in other words, which isn't a completely unfamiliar or unheard of kind of a phenomenon. Okay, thanks for watching.